Hyvää huomenta, päivää ja iltaa kaikille kuuntelijoille ympäri maailmaa. Finlandia Foundationin puolesta tervetuloa. God morgon, god dag eller god kväll till alla lyssnare runt om i världen. På uppdrag av Finlandia Foundation National, välkommen. Greetings to all of our listeners from around the world and on behalf of Finlandia Foundation National. We are so glad that you have chosen to be with us today for this really important program. My name is Tommy Flanagan, Executive Director of Finlandia Foundation. Today, we really do have something special on deck for all of us. This presentation is part of our online Finnposium program, a series of chats, presentations, or musical performances highlighting topics from around Finland, Finnish-America, and in today's case, beyond. The point is to learn something new, to highlight good and important work being done from around our community of members, leaders, and friends. And today's topic, we bring to the fore the topic of forest Finns. We offer our platform, this platform, Finnposium, to give voice to part of the wider Finnish community that is largely yet unknown in the United States. But when I met today's moderator, Sarah Kamla, at FinFest 2023 last year, it was clear to me that this is a story that matters. Sarah, a wife, mother, and teacher, is a strong advocate of the forest Finns in the United States. She's a descendant of the group herself and is currently collecting personal histories and family testimonies of the forest Finn minority in America. Sarah acts as a bridge, really. She envisioned this event and brought together our esteemed guests who are leading the movement for forest Finns in Norway and Sweden. I think you will all be just as impressed with this panel and their excellent work and knowledge for the community as I have been. So welcome to Ingmarie Bomelin, Jan Murvold, och Birger Nesholen. Together, this accomplished panel will give us a new way to understand a phrase we often use of being fiercely Finnish. We are so thankful that you are here with us live today, and we have a lot to learn from you, or at least I do. You are truly leaders of this movement, and you've already accomplished so much. And before we turn it over to Sarah to introduce our esteemed panel, I want to say how thrilled we are to be hosting this together with FinFest as our co-sponsor. Our organizations have a lot in common, and one of those things is a true interest in learning about and promoting the Finnish community in all of its diversity. I would like to welcome representative from FinFest, historian Dr. Sharon Franklin-Rahkonen. Sharon, take it away.
Thank you. FinFest is happy to welcome our distinguished guests also from the Nordic countries. Tervetuloa, välkommen. We first got to meet Sarah and this fascinating topic of forest Finns at last year's FinFest in Duluth. And we are looking forward to once again exploring this topic the coming July in Duluth. So I hope that everybody who is interested will go to the little bit of effort to find out more. This is something that in the United States has just come across our radar, and we are very interested in learning more about this. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, and without further ado, Sarah, take it away.
Greetings, everyone. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Flanagan and Finlandia Foundation, as well as the FinFest Committee for coming alongside us in this endeavor. We are highly excited about this. We realize that there are many Americans that are unaware of the forest Finn story, and they're part of that because they are unaware of their heritage. 3 years ago, Wayne Peterson and I had this vision of a forest Finn awakening in America, and we approached several affiliations over abroad and began knocking on doors and realized that in America, there is very little information for those looking for answers. And certainly the internet just has some information that is not actually correct. So we set about the business of building a cyber superhighway through social media that would act as the bridge to connect those in America with the heritage and the affiliations of those abroad in Norway and Sweden. So there's a very impactful and fascinating story to tell. We are certainly thankful for this opportunity, and we most certainly want to give recognition to the Forest Finnish interests in Norway for coming alongside us in this. They have been, their work has been pivotal in what we've been able to do over here. They have set up an American link for us, and they have been our mentors and our friends. So we're just thankful for all the other affiliations abroad. We have invited the top experts and historians and leaders of the Forest Finn minority abroad in Norway and Sweden. Most Americans are unaware that Forest Finns are one of 5 recognized minorities. They have been recognized by Norway since 1999, I believe. Our first speaker is recognized as a leader and top expert, and he's affiliated with both Norwegian and the Swedish affiliations abroad. So I would like to introduce our first speaker. His name is Mr. Jan Mervold. He is an avocational scholar with a special focus on the Forest Finns of Värmland and Norway, as well as Forest Finn areas in the rest of Scandinavia. He has done research on migration and migration patterns, Forest Finn genealogy, and has been one of the editors of the report about Forest Finn family names in Scandinavia. He is also the editor of the journal Finn Culture, chairman of the Norwegian branch of Sør-Värmland Finn Culture Association, as well as the chairman of the Genealogical Society, Forest Finn Genealogy, and board member of the Norwegian Genealogical Society. He has been at this work since 2008 at tracing Forest Finns via Y-DNA, and he is also one of the head administrators of Forest Finn DNA Project through Family Tree DNA. So without further ado, let's introduce Mr. Mervold, and we will be taking questions. So if you notice, there will be a question and answer box at the bottom of your Zoom bar. So if you look down on your computer, you'll see a little box and you can click on that. And please do feel free to ask questions, because we'll have time after each speaker to address the things that you'd like to come to know. Okay, Mr. Mervold, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I will take you through a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. I will go through relatively many pictures, and this means I will work relatively fast, but this presentation is recorded. All the pictures with lots of text can be read afterwards if they are interesting. I will go briefly through every theme, and I'll start with my place where I'm staying right now. If you see a car driving out of a gate, and back behind the car you see the borderline between Norway and Sweden. And the picture is taken on the Swedish side of the border. The car is in the middle of the border. The house that you see the pipe from on the right, on the chimney, is on the Norwegian side, and that's my house. And this is typical Forest Finn geography. And more geography to see where we are right now. We have Finland, Sweden, and Norway. I will talk about Scandinavia. That is not Finland. When we talk about the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark are meant. Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So Forest Finns in Scandinavia are only Norway and Sweden. I will start with a background and a little bit about migration. And the main part will be about Forest Finn genealogy, sources, family names, and a little bit DNA as well. And I'll start with the term Forest Finns. The name has been given to the people who were Finnish/Burn farmers immigrating to Sweden and finally Norway in a period between 1580 and 1650. And it's to separate them from other Finnish groups in Sweden and Norway. and also from a huge labor migration to Sweden in the 1900s. And some of the characteristics on forest Finns are their slash and burn agriculture that is central, 2-year rye production. They lived in different buildings than Norwegians and Swedes, small cabins. They had saunas, special saunas, and they had drying barns that are different from the ones in Norway and Sweden. They had different food tradition, of course, and not at least they had a different language. Actually, Eastern Finnish, the Savo dialect mainly. They had, which had hereditary family names ending mostly on nen. And today we can see this in, for instance, place names. And also the DNA is a characteristic today. It's different. So we go over to the background and migration theme. The forest Finns, their culture started when East Finns met Slavic people long time ago, learned a new way of getting harvest from forests. Because the Slavic people, they had used the slash and burn technique for a long time to make land possible to grow different sorts of yeah, I forgot that word actually, but they used this to get harvests out of earlier forests. But the huhta technique that the forest Finns had was a new development by the Eastern Finnish groups, and it was very successful. And the slash and burn technique is based on a 2-year rye. They cut the forests first, old spruce forest, and it's left to dry, and it's burned after 1 to 2 years. And finally, this gives very big crops. It's labor intensive, which needs lots of labor. The migration in Finland started this forest Finn, from a forest Finn view, that it started from Karelia, where is slash and burn movement colonized the Savo region, and this was mainly over in the 16th century. So the people who wanted to settle farms with the same slash and burn technique had to look to other districts. The Rautalampi parish was established in 1561. Was many of the forest Finns who came to Scandinavia informed that they had a background in Rautalampi. So I tried to make some little bit childish figures here, showing where Karelia and Savo region is on an old map from the 1700s. When they started to migrate to Scandinavia, there has always been focused very much on the push factors, but the pull factors were maybe more important. And we see the same principles here as when people migrated over to the States from Scandinavia too. I guess they are universal principles. They came to Sweden as early as around 1580. The East Coast first, it's natural. It was districts like Gävle area, Gästrikland, Viksjö, Ångermanland, Hassela in Hälsingland. And they came to Värmland, closer to Norway, in the 1620s. The first went to New Sweden as early as 1638. So here I've made a simple map showing a little bit. This is the area in Finland that they started to migrate from. And the people who came were mostly from this area, but we can see people from all parts of this western part coming over as well. So after they migrated, we can say that they colonized the area densely populated by forest Finns in this area. But afterwards, we can see back migration to Finland and even to Ingermanland, Ingria, and here over to New Sweden. So when they came to Norway, it was actually not the border areas close to Sweden that they came to first, because there was a war between Norway and Denmark, which was one kingdom, and Sweden at that time. So it was safer to settle closer to or in a safe distance from the border. So Hurdal, Toten were the first areas, and these border areas were settled around 1645-46 after this war period. So here Maud Wedin has made a map earlier showing the settlements, and you can see it's not only the traditional Finnskogen area, which is here. So you can see it's lots of other forest Finn settlements. And they go all the way up here to Åsele area, Strömsund in Ångermanland. And when we go to the west, we see that there are forest Finn settlements west of Oslo, actually. So let's go over to the forest Finn genealogy part. And I will talk about forest Finn names, sources, and DNA. So what's special with forest Finn genealogy? Yeah, they are a very mobile population. They had hereditary family names, as I mentioned before. Unique sources. That means that the sources that cannot be found in among Norwegians and Swedes, only for forest Finns. And there are some sources with unique content that I will show you later, and DNA again. And if you look on these things, there are negative. It's negative that they are very mobile. If you want to follow some families, if they move very much, it's difficult to follow them. But then we have the hereditary family names to help us, the unique sources, and all these things I list here are positive. So can be easier sometimes to find the forest Finn if you compare him to a Scandinavian. If you had moved much, you will lose the Scandinavian. You can find the forest Finn again. So some examples from the things on the last page. Their mobility. Here is a map showing the Norwegian-Swedish border. I'm sitting actually here right now. So this is descendants from a forest Finn living only 4 or 5 miles away from me now, 6 kilometers. Oslo is here. Mora in Sweden is up here. But we can see that his children and grandchildren, they moved to these places here. So it's closer from the border here to Oslo than it is to this area. He had people or children marrying or moving to all these places. So it would be hopeless to be sure about this without knowing or seeing something about their family names. So it's a normal transition to the next page, the hereditary family names. When you go to Finland, we can see that in Finland there was a tradition with family names, that they had hereditary names in the eastern part, and they had not hereditary names in the same way in the western part. This is in the old period. In the 1800s, people in the western part too started to get family names more like farm names. So these names here are from Finnish graveyards, typical Eastern Finnish names. And as Professor Kari Tarkiainen said in the Finns history in Sweden, one of the volumes there, he said that many of the family names that occur in the Scandinavian forests sounds very archaic to Finnish heirs. They are very old, genuine Sabo names. And what we know about the names today, we know very much thanks to Carl Axel Gottlund, maybe the most important person for Forest Finn culture knowledge today. In his visits in 1817 and 1821, he registered very much from the life and also the names that the Forest Finns used, which he wrote down, and they are kept and found again, and we use them today. He tells how he's thinking. He went to the priest in different parishes on the Swedish side and asked to use the to borrow the household records. The household records is where the priest wrote down his parish, on the members in the parish, and the priest had a very strict overview. He knew about everything. So Carl Axel Gottlund asked to borrow these books to write down the family names of the Forest Finns behind what the priest had written down. And as you see in the yellow text, this young man at 25, he understood that in the future these names would be forgotten. So this was his way to give us what we are seeing today. We would never have understood those names or known anything about them without him. So I get goosebumps every time I read this or tell this to somebody else. This is really fantastic for me. Here's an example from Gräsmark in Sweden, on the Swedish Finn forest area, Timbonäs. And here you see the priest, what he had written, Jan Clemetsson, it said here. He was born in 71, which is 1771, the parish, Gräsmark. And here is Carl Axel Gottlund's letters. He said that his Jan Clemetsson's family name is Ronkainen, which is also the name of his wife. They were distant relatives. And here is another of his records. This is a document that was handed over to the Swedish king in 1823. And it is from the Norwegian part, where we had no household records. So when we found this in the end of around 2000, as late as that, in the Finnish National Archive, we were thrilled. So this is here Carl Axel Gottlund made his own household records, actually, doing the same thing as the priest. So here we can see the family names of the families on the Norwegian side of the border. And here is in another area, Gunnarskog, Bogen, which is an area where he did never write anything in the Swedish household records. So this is important. And here we can see from the border area what Gottlund did. In the left column here, we see what he wrote down in the priest's household records, and this on the right is what he did in his own report to the government in 1823. These are the names that we can see here along the border. So Hämeenlinna is that's a very ordinary name in Finland too, and so it was here. And if you want to see the status of a family name in Finland today, it's possible to make it through the web. And they have this Finnish name statistic on the Digital and Population Data Service Agency. And you see the web address is in the left here. If you go to this one, you can maneuver on to the family name menu. And this is the total, that this brings you exactly to this page, this second one. And here are some reports that summarize much of the family name situation. This left one is a report that was published in 2009 on all family names found in different sources. This yellow one is a transcript of the document that Gottlund handed over to the government in 1823. I told you about that you can find things about family names in unique sources, and also about the migration and the Finns persons. And these sources are unique only for Forest Finns. They are about Forest Finns, actually. So the Norwegian and Swedish government had urge to know more about these strangers coming from another area. And in Norway, they could be spies, for instance, so it was important to find out they came from Sweden. So that's why they, for instance, in 1986, started the Finn census. This is an example from this Finn census. It says that Anders Kristoffersen, this is the transcript here directly, but it tells about Anders Kristoffersen Nikkaran, which is a family name. He was 36 years and born in Fryksdalen in Sweden by Finnish parents, and had come to Norway only 2 years earlier. Sources with unique content. This is sources that are typical for Norway, or typical or ordinary Norwegian or Swedish sources, like tax records. So this is an example of this. Along with the Norwegian persons in this church tax in record from Hurdal in 1650, we find one Forest Finn, and I know that because he has not the patronymic, he has only Forest Finn name. It says Påfuel Runken, and this is the first name. Runken is a version Scandinavian way from Scandinavian heirs listening. It's a form of Runkainen. I don't think we would ever have understood that Runken is the same as Runkainen without Karl Axel Gottlund. So a little bit about the Forest Finn DNA project. We have found out that through DNA, we can get new knowledge, and we're doing this through testing the historical population in the forest Finns areas. And when we test the historical population, we're not necessarily interested in tested people who living in the forest Finn areas today, but descendants from those who lived here once. So we believe that this can contribute to increased knowledge about Finnish family names, migration, and we want to make the forest Finn migration to Scandinavia more visible through this, and document connection to Finland and identify names of forest Finns outside the area where we have much family names, because we have many areas where family names are not known. The project focus on Y chromosome tests first. We are also interested in the other 2 types of tests, but these 3 tests can only be found in one company, and that's Family Tree DNA. It's an American company, not the biggest on DNA, but it's the company that suits the forest Finn project best. And as you see, I mark this Y chromosome test, which follows the paternal line. This means that this is the main focus in this project. And the Y chromosome inherits like this from father to son. So the man in the bottom, or living today, has exactly the same Y chromosome as his great-great-great-great-great-great-father on the father line, which is the same way as the family name inherits mainly. And another thing about the forest Finn Y chromosome is that it's actually very special compared to the other European Y chromosomes. So it's actually identical to Finnish Y DNA. It's very different from Scandinavian Y DNA. So if we have the Y DNA from a forest Finn, we can see that it's not the man that this person is descending from was not a Scandinavian. Today we have very many persons who have made this test and think this is interesting. So we have made great progress through this DNA project. And to illustrate the difference between, one of the differences between the forest Finn Y DNA and Scandinavian Y DNA, we can see here, it's typical genetic journey for the typical Scandinavian Y DNA R1. And so you can see it's coming out of Africa maybe 70,000 years ago, and has moved slowly up to the Russian steppes and is coming into Europe some 1,000 years ago. And another typical Scandinavian Y DNA is the group I, which has a more direct way after the coming out of Africa for 70,000 years ago, going straight up to Europe. And this is the genetic journey of a typical Finnish Y DNA. As you can see, it takes a more eastern route. So you can find traces of this journey along all these, or along all this line. And these names are tested today. It's 101 different names we have collected descendants from, who's descending through their father line. And the red ones are family names that we get matches on in Finland with people who have this name in Finland. And the names in parentheses are when we have more than one test. Give you some examples here. In Räisäinen, in Finland, we have got a match on this Räisäinen line here in Finland. We went actually to Finland to find the man to test, and found one immediately, and he had the same Y chromosome as these 3 men. But in the Forest Finn area, it's like if you believe that you have a father line to the first Forest Finn in Norway at the border, Per Larsen Räisäinen, you can take a DNA test at family tree DNA. If you match some of these 3 men, your genealogy is correct. Another example showing how Y DNA can be used in records from New Sweden in the 1670s or a little bit later. I believe this is from tax record. You can see here his name, William Tussey. Genealogy. When I were in New Sweden in 2012, I tried to find a descendant from this Tussey. I didn't find one, but later one of the descendants has joined the Forest Finn DNA project. So, but it's not possible to prove any connection to the Finnish name Tossavainen, but that was what I thought about. But when I started to look closer on his Y DNA, I saw that he actually had a match with the Tossavainen here in the Forest Finn area, which proves his connection. So his genealogy, even if it's not perfect, we can see that Tussey is the same as actually a variety of Tossavainen. Läänit, another example, showing a relatively advanced movement in a family, coming very early over from Finland to the Gävle area. And we have found out through genealogy that they have moved to all these places. And in Carl Axel Gottlund's registers from the 1817 and 1820, we can find that several of these persons have connections to the Lääninen names in some way, but it's very difficult to prove it by genealogy. But when we get Y DNA tests on the descendants from these areas, we have seen that they have the same Y chromosome. So this is proved. Another thing we can do with the Y DNA is to compare the distribution of the haplogroups in each area. So if we look on Norway and Finland, we can see again that the DNA is very different. So what is just a small sector here is relatively big in Finland. And it is like this in Finland, that this red sector is getting bigger the closer to the Russian border you get. And then the yellow one is closer, no, smaller. So if we compare the Norwegian with the Forest Finn, this is actually also for the Swedish, relatively the same. The red one here is a little bit bigger in Sweden, but it's more variety among the DNA here in Scandinavia than it is in the Forest Finn areas. This is on the historical population based on 373 Y DNA tests. So if we compare the Forest Finn DNA with Finland, we can see that it's quite similar. Yeah, there are some similarities here, you see. But if we go to the same areas, same area in Finland as they are said to come from, or we believe they come from, we can see that it's nearly identical. This is based on archaeology report in 2006, I believe. So this is men in Finland with ancestors, known ancestors from North Savo. So this is a new way of proving where the forest Finns actually came from. And if you look at another DNA way of DNA testing, the autosomal test, we can look at the test from some of the forest Finns living in the forest Finn area today. That this is actually 400 years after they left Finland, and they still have nearly no pollution from Norwegian and Swedish DNA. So this is how family tree DNA is calculating, compares his DNA. This is not Y DNA, this is all the DNA in his body. His genes are 99% similar to what you can find in people in Finland. So when it said 99, this is relatively correct, because in the generation where he has 32 ancestors, Jan Storberget, that's his DNA test, there's only one Norwegian. That's the only Norwegian in this family tree here. If you look at where you can find relevant information, if you want to see more about forest Finns, I have some bygdebøker in Norwegian. So this is books for different areas, and these three are for forest Finn, or the Finnskog area specifically. And if you use this together with these transcriptions here, you can learn very much about their family names, these two. And here is just an example showing that also the Finnemantal from the Finn census from 1986 also can be found in a book. And if you want to get in touch with people in Norway and Sweden who can help you, maybe there are, first of all, maybe is to start with the Solørlag of America. That is the American bygdelag that is most active and informed about forest Finns. But here in Norway, we have Solørs Lekshistorlag, which cooperates with Solørlag of America. And you see here different other genealogical associations. And this is our new flag that Ingmarie will tell you more about later, but this is the end of my presentation. So if you have some questions, I could maybe manage to answer them, or one of the other speakers can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mervold. That's so much information and fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. I have a quick question, or at least something that may be relevant to Americans who really, this is all new information. I think many are aware of the New Sweden colonies through our history books, but are unaware that those were left behind. The generations remained. You mentioned Gotland and his journey through farmland, gathering information about forest Finns, I guess folklore as well, and whatever. He was fascinated with the people. And I love the mention that he's considered the patron saint of the forest Finns because he saved everyone's names and history. Could you talk a little bit about probably just what prompted him to? I had read that he had spent every night, late at night, copying thousands and thousands of names. What was the climate at that time for the forest Finns in relation to maybe like the church and the government? Can you touch on that? Like what was going on during that time for them?
Yeah, they were still Finnish speaking. I believe maybe 8,000 to 9,000 people were in close to the Swedish border here, were still speaking their native language. This was right before the school system, the new roads, etc. Lots of things happened after 1820 that made it difficult to keep their culture and keep their language. When Gotland came, he, I guess he waked them up a little bit, and they and when he was here, they started to make a claim towards the Norwegian and Swedish authorities. Norway and Sweden were in union at that time actually, so it wasn't strange that they went to the Swedish king. 12 persons from this area walked to the Swedish king in 1823, and they delivered a report. And of course, the Swedish Norwegian authorities didn't want them to have some kind of independent area here. They were afraid of that because other groups could have wanted to do the same thing, and this was not what governments accepted in those days. But it's typical for the area or the period that there are movements like that. But this is unique in Norwegian and Swedish history, actually, that so many persons did this. And they had decided to build new churches with Finnish-speaking priests, and they wanted legal system and post system, police system with people speaking Finnish. And he wanted to do this to keep the culture and let the people have their beliefs and their lives continued in Finnish. But the governments got aware that forest Finns was living here and not without having learned Swedish and Norwegian. So they used this some of this report to argue for a stronger way of forcing them to learn Norwegian and Swedish.
And can you explain to Americans what the difference would be with their language at that time, of the language of the forest Finns? Would you call it Savo? Is that correct? Would that be the correct terminology?
It was an archaic Savo dialect.
Okay, so it's
but modern Finns today would maybe some modern Finns today could think that this sounded strange, but there has been scientists here from the end of the 1800s writing down and looking at the language, so that's what they say.
Okay,
I'm
so
not
I guess
fluent in Finnish in any way.
There's some question of like, well, what's the difference between someone who lived now in Eastern Finland and what would be how is that different?
It's like people who moved from Norway to USA, we can hear a difference. when those who still speak Norwegian in USA today, we can hear they have not it's normal that the language is frozen in the new for those who migrated, while the language back home is always developing. So there will be a difference, but that is, I guess, I will hear clear similarities, but also very different, and they would adapt other words, etc.
And would you say that at that time it would have been kind of shameful to be known as a forest Finn at the time of Gotland's visit, or is that
Depends a little, maybe in a way, yes. Maybe it came a little bit later because they were at that time they were still relatively isolated. So, but they were divided from the Swedish in a way. So they looked, I guess they looked upon the Swedes as the other ones. And the Norwegians too.
Okay.
Maybe
So,
Birgir can, maybe Birgir Nesson has a meaning about that.
It's always difficult to try to think or even tell how people were or what people thought 200 years ago. I think it has been quite individually, also from family to family, person to person, and area to area. Jan was showing this map of Scandinavia with the forest Finn settlements, and it's a huge geographical area altogether. And I think the situation and the conditions in different geographical areas was quite different. It was different both within the group of forest Finns, and it was different between the forest Finns and the local authorities or the Swedish or Norwegian population around them. So I think this is a quite big subject that should be more studied. It's the tradition to think that it was kind of shame to be forest Finn at the time, and of course I'm quite sure that many felt that, partly because how they lived, which was quite different to Norwegian or Swedish people, but also the language, of course. If they had problems expressing themselves in Swedish or Norwegian language, you might be ashamed of that. But this should be studied more closely.
Okay, so that's thank you so much. We have a few questions. I want to just touch on what some people have put in the question and answer box. Did the Swedish and Norwegian states actively recruit the forest Finns to clear and settle the wilderness forest lands in their countries?
In a way they did. But they actually encouraged everyone to take up new land because they wanted more taxpayers. But the forest Finns also got this information and understood that if they moved to areas in Scandinavia, they could still live the way they wanted to live with their slash and burn technique. So I don't know. I don't think they actively recruited forest Finns. I know that this has been claimed sometimes, but I don't think they actively wanted forest Finns to come, but it was perfect for the forest Finns. They got 4 to 6 years without paying taxes. This also for Norwegian and Swedish settlers, it was like this. So it was a good start. The most professional ones, they lived in one place for 6 years. When they started to pay tax, they sold their place and took up another place.
Okay, so we have a question from our beloved Frank Eld, who everyone in the Finnish-American community knows. He actually took a trip sponsored by the Finlandia Foundation, I believe last year, and met with Mr. Nesholin and did a lot of forest fin research. And so he has a quick question. Are there other New Sweden names known? And welcome, good to see you.
Yes, there are. And we also have in the Forest Fin project, we have a camp, which is, I don't know if the camp descendant immediately understood that this could be Kempäinen in Finland, but I thought so at once when I saw it. And when there was a DNA test suddenly in our project, there was no doubt he matched Kempäinens in Finland. We also have Kempäinen here, so
Okay.
yeah.
So
That's
see,
one. There are other ones as well, Mulika, and yeah.
There's many comments popping up, so I'm going to do my best just to touch briefly on a few, and then we'll move on to Mr. Nesholin. We can circle back, and if we have time at the end, and answer more questions from Mr. Mervold. Let's see, you're very happy that Jan mentioned the New Sweden colony as editor of Swedish Colonial Society Journal. I recommend contacting SCS for information regarding forest fins. A gentleman said there is a Savonlinnan in my Finnish seniors building in Toronto, Canada. Also, let's see here. Another point, the name used coming into Ellis Island is totally different. Do you want to touch on that? Why the names are different in America?
I will talk about that a bit,
Okay.
Sarah. Yeah,
Okay.
so I can take that later.
Wonderful. Okay, Mr. Nesholin, I would like to introduce you now as our next speaker. Mr. Birger Nesholin is the academic director at the Norwegian Forest Finnish Museum and the head deputy of Forest Finnish Interests in Norway. He is also the head of the national minorities in Norway. His pivotal work was instrumental in establishing the Forest Fin people in becoming one of 5 recognized minorities in Norway, and have been so since Norway ratified the Council of Europe's Framework Convention on the Protection of National Minorities in 1998. He has been in service to the Forest Fin people since 1973, and he was decorated with the King's Medal of Merit for his work in dedication to the Forest Fin minority. Mr. Nesholin is a world-renowned and sought-after speaker regarding Forest Finnish heritage and culture, as well as current affairs regarding Forest Fin minority issues. Thank you, Mr. Nesholin, for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. Greetings to everyone from Norway, the Norwegian part of the Finnskogen area, and also from the Museum of Forest and Culture in Norway, where I'm sitting at the moment. And thank you, Jan, also for your very good presentation of the background and what the forest fins are as biological persons compared back to the Finnish background. I think it's very important to and useful when we talk about forest fins or talk about what are the forest fins. It's important and useful to know the forest fin culture, the content of the forest fin culture, because then we can see that this is a totally different group than what is Swedish and Norwegian culture. Oh, sorry. I was there, restored. I'm going to show you, just as I said, some elements of the forest Finn culture, some of the content of the forest Finn culture, to understand how these forest Finns are different from Swedes and Norwegians. And this forest Finn culture, the content of the culture, I can't change picture. Why not? There. Because this, well, this picture is part of Finnskogen, and you can see why it's called the forests. The forest Finns in both Norway and Sweden are recognized as national minorities, and part of the recognition of the forest Finns as national minorities is that they are so different in the culture towards Swedish and Norwegian cultures that they have special themes in their culture, which is important to preserve, and that there today also is a big interest within the forest Finns today to preserve this culture. To understand much of the background for the forest Finns, it's necessary to look at the map. You see Norway and Sweden at the left-hand side of the map, and you see Finland, and then most of the rest of it towards the right is Russia and Siberia. And all those colored areas, those are different Finno-Ugric people, which, well, the map is mainly made from the Finno-Ugric or Uralic languages, but it also is then a map of the culture of these Finno-Ugric groups. The forest Finns coming from Finland has, of course, the Finnish background also in the culture, but much of the background in the forest Finn culture comes even further east, further from east, because many of these cultural elements, they are also brought into Finland from east by this group of people. And normally, at least in Europe, maybe also America, we don't know so much about these people in Russia, which are not Russians, but they are Finno-Ugric people with their own Finno-Ugric language and their cultural elements or content that goes very long back in time. So this is a useful background to see also towards Europe, because most of Europe that Scandinavia is often related to is the German population and the German culture of Western Europe. And this is the reason why the forest Finns in Scandinavia, together with the Sami and Kveni people of Scandinavia, is quite different from the more Western traditions of Scandinavia. This is apart from Finland. This is maybe the areas of Finland where we think of Finland with all those 1,000 or 80,000 lakes, which are in Finland. But Finland is also this huge forests. And much of this in the central or eastern part of Finland was the areas where the forest Finns lived and finally migrated from. And this time also, as Jan said, Finland was then the eastern part of the Swedish kingdom. So the first migration towards Sweden was not actually a migration out of the country. It was within the Swedish-Finnish kingdom. So this is Scandinavia. This is the Finnskogen area, because this belt of forests starts with the Uralic Mountains in Russia, goes through Finland and Sweden and Norway, and then it continues on the other side of the planet in North America and Canada. And this is the resource of the slash and burn cultivation that Jan briefly talked about. This is the resource. Old spruce forest, which they cutted down to start the process of harvesting rye in this way. And when they had cut it and it had been drying for 1 or 2 years, they came back and burnt it all. This was necessary to have many persons during the seasons of the slash and burn cultivation. Therefore, this was not an activity that one farm made by itself. It was often a cooperation within several farms and geographical areas, or with larger family structure. The goal was to burn all the woods in all the tree substance, and also the upper part of the soil, to make as much ashes as possible. And that is the fertilizer for the growing of the rye, which they then saw in the ashes after the burning. And after just a few days, the rye comes up from this black sorted soil. And it grows for 2 years. First year just a heap of grass, and the second year it comes straw with axe on. And as Jan said, this made huge crops compared to the Norwegian and Swedish farmers that grew barley and what's the other one? Forgot the word. At least then, 400 years ago, we can imagine that one crop or one result of such slash and burned areas looked like this in the forest. It could be huge areas if they had many workers or many families or many households comparing or in cooperation with this one slash and burn area, because the more families that cooperated in one such area, the bigger it had to be, because they were sharing the crop afterwards. This slash and burn cultivation mostly is the reason also for a special building, which eastwards is kind of different types also, but this is the latest version of it, a timber building with the interior of kind of logs up in the room where they are placing the harvested straw of slash and from the slash and burn areas. And on the left, as you see, there is a smoke oven that were used to make warmth in the room to dry the rye there. This drying with a smoke oven made the rye get the smoky taste, which they or even nowadays we can taste that smoky taste on bread that is baked from rye that is dried in such barns. Here's how it looks from under. This slash and burn cultivation was in many places the background for new farms. Because when the one area of slash and burn was finished, it was a very useful place to make a farm or build a farm. And also that was the goal in the way that much of the logs that were cut for the area was taken away for building houses. Later on, when the area was finished, the crops were taken and the farm could be raised. This is called a Finn plow in the Finnish areas or in Scandinavia, but it's very important to know that this was never used in slash and burn cultivation, because in the slash and burn areas you don't need to use any tools to do something about the soil of the area. About the houses, how they lived. They used in all their buildings smoke ovens without chimneys. And the dwelling houses could be small as this with one room. It could be 2 or 3 rooms, and even later on quite more complex buildings where one of the rooms had this smoke oven heating. And this is the smoke oven, a quite large stone oven with no chimney, and as you can see on the ceiling, all the smoke has come into the room for decades or centuries, so it's totally black, of course. And it's often useful to think that this must have been a totally disastrous room to live in. But this was a heating or a warming technique that had been developed through hundreds of years, and therefore the building themselves were adjusted to control the smoke in the room, which you can see here. The smoke level, at least after 20-30 minutes from your heating or starting the heating, all the smoke is up under the ceiling and quite clear air under. One speciality, not so very big, but this is how they place their youngest children. Not on the floor with this cradles there, but hanging from logs or from the ceiling. And we have still those in museums in Finland, and we have those also in museums in the forest fin areas of Norway and Sweden. And of course, you know about the Finnish sauna. I know you know about it also in America. And of course, the oldest type of sauna is the smoke sauna, which is heated by a smoke oven, and it can look quite dramatic during the heating. But this part of the process, you are not in the sauna, as you can understand. You're heating for 2.5, 3.5, 4 hours, depending on the sauna and the oven. And then you also have warmth for 3 or 4 hours of bathing sauna afterwards. So we have still some of the old saunas in Scandinavia that is still in use, but we try to inspire people to build new saunas so we don't destroy the old saunas that are more of cultural heritage for the forest fin culture. And we have specialities of smoke ovens. This is maybe one of the most rare buildings of the world, because it was in this area of one part of the Norwegian side of Finnskogen, it got the tradition, or started the tradition, to build buildings or rooms with multi-purpose. And for different purpose of warmth, you need different constructed ovens to make that special warmth you need. And I hope you recognize it, Frank. The forest fins also had the same traditions as they had in Finland, or they had in Finland before they migrated from there. They had what is in Finnish ulkouni, which translated means outside ovens with no buildings around them, which were used in summertime for different cooking and other purposes. So they didn't have to warm the huge stone magazine of the oven inside the dwelling house. In the building tradition, it's quite different also how they made the roofs. The waterproof part of the roof is birch bark, which has been common in, I think, every geographical area of the planet, which birch are growing. But on top of the birch bark, they used logs, as we can see here, to cover the birch bark, or to make the birch bark, to hold the birch bark in place. And the birch bark is one of the typical handicrafts of forest fins, because it's one of the typical handicrafts also for Finns, for Estonians, and for Finno-Ugric people in Russia, where they grow birch. And birch bark could be used in very many ways, or to make very many different tools, boxes, things for practical purpose. And this is the tradition, or this is a handicraft that many in Scandinavia still can, and also has learned from generation to generation in their family. And the pattern of the birch many birch bark productions, they has also been taken up as a technique in knitting, like this. And it's documented that this technique of knitting has probably first evolved in parts of Finland and in parts of forest fin areas in Scandinavia. Food tradition, they still today, or we still today, eat some of the food that has been coming with the forest fins to Scandinavia and has been part of the tradition through these 400 years. The place names, as Jan said, there are thousands in the forest fin areas of Scandinavia still, and also some that are marking them in a new ways, which is very positive. One element that is very special for the forest fins are coming from the fundament of the Finno-Ugric culture, which is the shamanic background in the culture, or the shamanic way of thinking, the shamanic way of knowledge about nature. And I'm quite sure that that is the reason why this main tree on farms in Finnskogen is rowan and not birch, which is useful or most useful in Norwegian and Swedish culture. Part of this shamanic tradition also contains magic. Magic is a way to try to make the forces in nature help you with your needs. And one way of using this magic is by magical symbols, which is pentagram, one of them, which is a very, very old symbol made in most different cultures of the world, and also the octagram with eight-pointed like an eight-pointed star, and also the vulva symbol, which we think as a symbol for prosperity, for how shall I put it? Very positive symbol for many things to well, like I know it's been used in the northern Norway also for all fishermen that used it when they were rowing out for fishing on the sea, which then symbolized both to come back with a huge catch and also to come back safe. And this is the symbol that I found very interesting. It's a very, very old symbols that are also in the caves in Central Europe that is 20, 30, 40,000 years old. And it's not so easy to see the meaning of it in many different ways they are used back in time. But in the forest fin connection, I think it's very useful to see how they were used or which meaning they had, and that also has been discovered now later by the whole society. Because you don't have to know the language to know what this means. It's a stop sign. And that is also what is quite obvious in many ways, that we find these hands carved into buildings. They are not carved anywhere in the building. They are carved on openings, where it's natural to think that they have to close for evil interests. As an end of my presentation, I'll just show a few of the forest fin farms today, which also, of course, looks quite modern, which in a way is also quite modern, but that contains details of constructions of buildings and other things that goes far back in the forest fin culture. But to see those connections to the forest fin cultures, you have to know about the culture and the content of the culture. And it's a huge area, as Jan showed, and also more details of the Norwegian side. You can see that Oslo is here, so it's a huge area geographically that got this forest fins population settled also in Norway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nesholin. It's fascinating. And here's the thing, is there's so much information, and the box, question and answer box, is just filling up by the minute. And of course, there's only so much time to unpack all of this. We want to just make sure that we have plenty of time for Ms. Böhmelin to give her presentation. So we may circle back and ask the rest of the questions at the end of her talk. But this is really, for Americans, I think it's real important for you to know that these are really the titans of the forest fin history and culture. They are people that are just on the front line of this and know so much, and they have a vast resource of knowledge and are highly respected. So I wish we could keep them for several more hours, but we are going to be strapped for time, and we're just going to hop right over. And I would like to introduce the next speaker. And I'm incredibly thankful for her to join us. She is a very busy woman, like just as the other speakers are as well. She is known as a forest fin leader and activist in Sweden. So her perspective is going to be a bit different from those who are now established as a minority in Norway. Her story is much different, and we'd love to get her perspective on the forest fin movement abroad. Just a little brief introduction. Ingmaria Böhmelin is the member of the minority of forest fins in Sweden and president of the interest of the Confederation of Forest Fins in Sweden. Also a forest fin farmer with a focus on sustainable forestry. She's the grandmother to Levi, Isla, and Milo, who also have a grandmother from American Samoa. An American sister to Ingmaria is Eileen, who lives in Placentia, New Mexico. She also has many ancestors from Sweden who live in the US, and mostly in the area of Minnesota. Ingmaria also is a politician for the Center Party with healthcare issues, women's rights, and equal value of all people as topics. So she's clearly an activist in her world. She's also the president for the Patient Association for Lipedema in Sweden, and also a member of the board of European Federation Association for Patients with Hemochromatosis, both which are inherited diseases. So we would like to allow her to speak on behalf of the forest fin minority in Sweden. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me be here. and greetings to all of you from a bit cold Sweden, but we are waiting for the spring to come. I also would like to thank both Jan and Birger because of the knowledge they have. You can see 5 years ago I didn't know anything about this. No one had talked about being Finnish in my family. So I have another perspective, and I will talk about what's happened today in Sweden. Okay. So I will talk to you about Sweden Finns and forest Finns. Is there something to learn? We talked about parts of this already, so I will not tell you so much, but when they came, we in Sweden, we talk about this, that it was Karl, the Duke of Värmland. He was later the King Karl, or the 9th in Sweden, that went to the area in Savolax and asked them, because he wanted to have people in the border to Norway. And that's the story in Sweden. But as you can see, it was 10,000 people accepted this offer that they were giving. And that would mean these are a lot of numbers now, but we say that about 2 million people in Sweden and Norway now are inherited from these people that came. And one of them here is Sandra Bergman. She could have had the name Kartoinen because that was what her great-great-great-mother had. We talk about this, that is around 2 million people. And when we set down 11 organizations in Norway and Sweden, we said we need a symbol, we need a flag so that it could join us. And this is what we did. 5 of us had the mandate to make a competition, and the shape of the flag was decided. The winner was Mr. Lindbo and Miss Gullhagen. And the colors and shapes are not random. They reflect the Finnish forest tradition in a dignified way. And we talk about the green. The green describes the importance of the forest. Yellow stands for this special rye. And red stands for the fire and the sacred rowan tree, as I also have a picture on. A color which, together with black, was also found in the flag of Savolax and Karelia, where they came from. Black, of course, is for the ashes, which was important for the rye to grow, and the black walls you saw on the smokehouses. So now we had a flag, but we also needed a day. So we decided to have the 21st of June as a Forest Finn Day. So this is what we now should celebrate, all of us in these countries that ancestors are living. And why did we pick this one? Yeah, the special rye was put in the ashes about this time, midsummer we say. And it's 21st of June is the longest day. And it also has a connection to the fertility, which is known from symbolism of the forest Finns. And the forest Finns' own flag and day will strengthen the forest Finn identity and general knowledge of the minority and its culture. To become a genuine Swede for the new forest Finns was not easy. The church had difficulties spelling the Swedish names, so surnames were changed into these church books that you could see that Jan showed. At school, the children were giving Swedish names, and they also were bullied, not only for the funny names or strange language, but also because they smelled of smoke. This also meant they were not that sick, because neither fleas or bacteria liked this smoke, so that could be a good one. but the shame grew. There may also have been a splash of jealousy because of the big harvest of the rice that these people had. And they had many, many more animals because their animals were in the forest. Now let's see. This is Mrs. Berit Nilsson. She's a Kajalan and she eats muttianfläsk. A newspaper in Sweden in 1904 had this sign or this text inside, and if you listen, it's quite, yeah, it's I read it. This hostility between the Finns and the rural people was naturally a strong contributing factor to why the immigrant population, with their toughness that is characteristic of their race, maintained their language and customs for so long. The government intervened with little results to persuade the Finns to learn Swedish. This is how they thought 1904. This is also what happened in 1921, because the parliament in Sweden decided to establish the National Institute for Racial Biology in Uppsala, with this Herman Lundborg here as the director. With his work, he meant to counteract the degeneration of the Swedish people. The business initially met with little criticism and was also supported by a number of cultural figures. And internationally, Sweden was seen as a leading country. Minorities in Sweden had their skulls and bodies measured. They had a picture taken without clothes, men, women, and children on a line. Today, it would be pure abusing. The shame grew larger. You've seen this map. So I have it because until 1960, the language still lived on, for example, in Värmland. And there are even recordings made from Kajsa Vilhonen from the early 1900s you can listen to today. And the language is not lost, but maybe not noticed anymore. A small group, for instance, in Lekvattnet, they have lessons every week. Forest Finns they are, of course. But the shame had grown so strong that there were few in the next generation who talked about the culture, the knowledge and the history to the children. Plus, they did not talk in the native tongue. There are 8 areas today called Forest Finland, but few knew about their existence or even know about their existence, even among relatives, the government, or the politicians in Sweden. The culture lives on a certain extent for tourists. In the summer, you can eat this muttianfläsk or muttian pork. You can visit the old houses that Birger showed, and you can learn how to cut the grass. But the understanding and knowledge is almost gone. This is why we started the Association for Forest Finns' interest in Sweden. To talk, to spread information, and influence media, politicians, and other people with power. During the migration to the United States around the years, several families came, as Jan or Birger told you about, but they left Sweden also because there was a lot of alcohol in Sweden, and also because they wanted maybe to have their own religion. And these families left across the sea to a new country. And for the Forest family, it wasn't maybe not so big journey because their ancestors had made the decisions hundreds of years ago when they moved to Sweden. In the documents from passengers list and the immigrant registry in the US, it's possible to read surnames like Eriksson, Andersson, Olsson, instead of the Finnish names they had, Kekkonen, Kartunen, Hämäläinen, or Orainen. A surname can say so much depending on context and knowledge around it. Many of the Tornedalen surnames, another minority in Sweden, who speaks meänkieli, have the same history as Forest Finns. Even the names of places in Tornedalen and northern Sweden has been given more Swedish names, regardless of the motive for the name change. It's been 2 years since I got my family name back, said Gunnel Sarkimukka. Gunnel tells how she felt ruthless and outside in relation to her older siblings and parents, because unlike them, she grew up speaking Swedish instead of the Tornedal Finnish that they and the surroundings environment had in common. In the light of that decision of ban speaking Finnish, a feeling of shame, and the state worked politically to change, and in many cases eradicate, could be why relatives in US may not have their Finnish surnames, or no one told their story. The question is, how many people in US know their background today? But it's also, like I told you, it's not that many people know their background is even in Sweden. Sweden Finns, what's the difference? Or who, when, or where? In Sweden, we could talk about the children from Finland that arrived in Sweden during the wars. We talk about the Second World War and the continuation war, 1939 to 1944 in Finland. And that was a great challenge for the families there. So between 65 and 70,000 children came and got a new family in Sweden. Some stayed so long that the Finnish language disappeared. So when the war was over and these children were going back to their family, they couldn't communicate with their mother and father. Later on, many of these people, after stopped the school or finished the school, they returned to their Swedish family. In 1950, when the World War was over, more workers were needed in Sweden, more than we had. As an example, in the textile industry here, you can see that from Borås. About 60,000 people went to Sweden, with or without family, and they all came from Finland. Many from Swedish-talking areas, but also from the Finnish people. Today, it's about 730,000 inhabitants that live and work in Sweden with a Finnish background. But many got stuck also in their Finnish origins and language, worked and lived together with friends from home. Lonely men from the factories had problems with alcohol, and there was a sad story. They were the people of the outside society. Also here, for the Forest Finns families, for different reasons, did not use the native tongue towards their children. So they lost the language and could not communicate with relatives in Finland. Today, there are more than 60 Finnish administrative areas in Sweden, which means that all communication to residents in the municipality must be in their home language. There must be schools, home for elderly, staff who speak Finnish, and also preschools. The healthcare system must be able to receive and explain when the patient comes. Moving from your birthplace, live a different culture, maybe even change your religion, is not unusual, not today and not historical. being allowed to approve and practice instead of inheriting the shame needs though some attention. The language who almost got lost from the forest Finn, where almost no one today can speak Finnish, together with the current generation of Sweden Finn, indicates an emergency situation for this minority as well for all the others. You need to know your language. This is important knowledge, and research provides this. In Sweden now, because of the European Union, there is also the opportunity not to only acquire in school the language, but also the culture if you belong to a national minority. My experience has made me more aware that language and culture are directly connected to one's identity. It's amazing to see the confidence my grown children have. They know who they are. They know the history of their people. They are not afraid to say who they are or be who they are, including helping their children feel that they have an identity. This was said for Karen Baldwin. She's a tribal spouse in Miami tribe, Indiana. Conclusion. Forest Finns were by far so forgotten in Sweden, so they did not have a standard of national minority themselves as they are in Norway. Learning the mother tongue improves vocabulary in the mother tongue and in Swedish. The Norwegian School Board already showed in 2008 that students who had studied the mother tongue subject continuously obtain higher credit score at the end of ninth grade. Inheriting the shame is a request we do not do for research at the university, not only for these minorities, also for the generations from the people who experienced the Holocaust. And I give you a recommendation to read this book. It's from an American author, Leanne Hinton. She have talked to the minorities all over the world, and the book had all these stories. Council of Europe. EU Commissioner Miguel Coyet came to Sweden in 2023 for a meeting with us minorities and to get a clear picture of the situation. This is from the report. Forest Finns, usually covered by policy measures for Sweden Finns, would like their community to be recognized as a distinct national minority. And some minority, notable Sweden Finn and Tornedalian, Quens and Lantaset, remain particularly invisible. More efforts are needed in terms of promoting such knowledge in education and teacher training. So what can we learn? The language and knowledge of your background is perhaps more important than we ever realized. Not everyone wants to know. Not everyone has an interest. But you who have, you should get the opportunity for yourself, for your children, and for those who are coming. So now, thank you for listening to me, and you have questions. And if you don't want to take them here, you can just send me a mail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was such an impactful presentation, and certainly, any time mention of the eugenics project, it brings tears to everyone's eyes, and certainly my own. To think that our family came over in the late 1800s seeking a better life, and those that were left behind lived through that. And it's astounding to think about that. There's a few questions here that I just want to address real quickly. I thought this was an interesting one. Let's see here. Apologize. Christy Mendel. She's in our Forest Finns in America group. In addition to Savolax and Karelia, I've read that a significant number of Forest Finns also migrated from the Vastland area of Finland. Would you agree? I'm wondering if there are any significant differences in these three groups, or do they all generally share the same Forest Finn culture?
The Rautalampi parish was established in the border area between the Tavastland and Savo area. And this, or people from Tavastland had moved into this area earlier, so it was not only people from Savo area there. So it was a mix. But I guess they moved after moving into the Forest Finn area from Tavastland.
Okay.
But also other parts of Finland where this Forest Finn Tavast people mix were living had moved to other areas in Finland and moved to Scandinavia from there. So it's not one answer that they came from one place.
In regards to Maria, your presentation, I think there's just so much to unpack with your story. You just have such another perspective, and certainly you're very on the forefront of current events in Sweden, and you're working towards having the Forest Finn minority, or as a minority, recognized in your country. And certainly we haven't even touched on anything regarding the Truth and Reconciliation findings in Norway. So there's so much left to discuss, and I hope that this will have an opportunity to go further into more of what you all have been sharing. There's just a few more questions here. I know there was a question in regards to, do Americans know, that those of the Swedish and Norwegian descent in America, are they aware of their heritage? And I would say this is all new news. I would say most of us, at least certainly in our side of the world, it is very difficult to find information. I think a lot of our families came over seeking new opportunities in life, and they ended up in the upper Midwest, certainly in the logging camps. And that life that they knew, they left behind and they became Americans. Certainly, we have records now of, I think it was the census of late 1860s, where they were allowed, the census wrote down the ethnicity of the families that they talked to. And in our case, our family put down Finn. So even, from traveling from the 1600s, they were still Forest Finns at that time. But coming to America, they in that transaction, they became Americans, and that was lost. So many Americans are coming to know their heritage, certainly through the DNA testing. It is not about DNA as much as it being a doorway to coming to know and having an active and living relationship with your heritage. And so I would say the answer to that is most Americans do not know. And the purpose of this presentation was to gather these experts, these wonderful experts and speakers, to communicate and educate the American public, because really we are in the dark, and we certainly are on this path of creating this Forest Finn awakening in America. So on our social media page, it really serves, its purpose is to connect families that are lost, to build new relationships, and certainly make connections for Americans to the affiliations that these people are involved with. So if you were to contact us on Facebook under Forest Finns in America, you would be able to follow all of these people and certainly be in touch, and would have more access to more resources. So we're just incredibly thankful for this opportunity to open the door a little bit wider for Americans to come to know Forest Finn heritage. One more question. How do you learn about the group who verifies the Y chromosome from the male relatives? I need to notify my cousin. That's a great question.
I guess if you take a Y-DNA test, and you are sure that you have a forest Finn or a Finnish male line to an area where the family name is traditional and has inherited from father to son, then you will look at your match list. You get a list of people that have also taken a Y-DNA test, and you see their family name or the family name of their ancestor. So that's, you know, I have the same T-shirt as Sarah, but not the same name. This is my family name. When I wanted to know if my genealogy was correct, I contacted my maternal uncle, because it's on my mother's side. And he fortunately had a male line back to the first Pentikainen in the Forest Finn area. And when he tested, we didn't get any Finnish match with the Pentikainen name. We still haven't done that. But what I have managed is to find another son of the first Pentikainen and to find a male line from him till today. And we asked a man to test, and he had the same Y chromosome as my uncle. So you can use it with luck if you do it the right way, but you cannot use it without genealogy. Actually, it is nearly worthless. So it's a combination between genealogy and surname knowledge. When we say surname today, the family names are surnames in Finland, but in the old time it was family names, because we had no registry telling what the name was on each person. So that's why I'm not using the surname, because that's a modern construction.
Let's see here. So we are coming down to the very end of our time. We have so many questions and not enough time to address them all, but I think we will be able to at least put these people in contact with the answers in the future. So I just want to say thank you to everyone on this presentation. My hope is that we will perhaps have Ms. Bromelin from Sweden attend our FinFest event, and possibly in the future a Norwegian delegation to come over. So in this, we're thankful for this bridge of building a relationship with Americans to those abroad. Thank you, Mr. Flanagan, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Jan, Birger, Ingmari. This has been such an engaging conversation. This was really an introduction. I think this is a start of something that can continue. I sort of see a series coming out of this. I mean, people are obviously interested. The point of this, and Sarah's point was, to identify those Americans who might have a connection to forest Finns, whether or not they know their ancestry now as Swedish or Norwegian or Finnish or whatever it is. I think you really struck at something that people are interested in. If anyone wants to get in touch, please get a hold of us at office@finlandiafoundation.org. We can always connect you. You can also get a hold of your contacts at FinFest, who can connect you. I want to thank FinFest so much for co-sponsoring this with us, Sarah, for your idea. Sharon, Franklin Rahkonen for being here. I want to wish everybody a happy rest of your weekend. Please stay in touch. There's more of this to come. Actually, there's some more Finnposiums coming up, Finnposia, and one of those will actually be featuring Frank Eld to as a follow-up on some of his research as well. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Sarah and Sharon especially for collaborating, Jan, Birger, and Ingmari for being here also so late where you are at this point. So kiitos paljon, tack ska ni ha, hyvää viikonloppua ja trevlig helg.